And we're live. We're back. Holy, Kurt, look at you.
Yeah.
Jay, look at you. You guys are beautiful right now.
I'm in the witness protection program. That's why you can't see my eyes. You can only see my distinguishable beard. And Shane looks freshly shaved.
Yeah, it's the weekend, fellas. I'll tell you that right now.
That's the truth. Tomorrow's Father's Day too.
Yeah. Are you good gentlemen fathers as well, or?
Yeah. I'm on dad duty right now. Actually, I'm trying to fight with him to go to bed. I'm going to be checking the monitor all the time because Mom was working tonight. But anyway. Wow. Welcome to the first Focal Plane podcast. Literally the first one. Episode numero uno. Recorded live via the interwebs in the police state formerly known as Canada, where everything is made up and freedom doesn't matter.
Well,
there you go.
You're still hidden.
All right, FFP, First Focal Plane Podcast, is proudly sponsored by EM Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta. EM Precision is one of Canada's premier precision and long-range rifle builders, established in 2014. From lightweight hunting rifles, start packages to extreme long-range boomers, EM Precision has the expertise to get you up and running with confidence. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and of course their website at emprifles.ca.
Nailed it.
Were you supposed to do that? I think whatever. I did it better than you would have.
Who cares? It's all good. It's all good. Hey, whatever. We got to pay the bills somehow. And you just did it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I'll take this one. So we have tonight a follow-up from a special guest we had a few weeks ago. The MLA for Lac St. Anne Parkland, Honorable Shane Getson. So welcome, sir. We're looking forward to this update.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on again. And again, normally I'm wearing a shirt and tie when I'm in the legislature. So you're catching me as in my natural state as possible right now. I'm just literally at home and finished getting back from taking a flight in the plane.
Shane Getson in the wilderness.
Yeah. Wait, so you're a normal person? Politicians are people too?
Well, I wouldn't say all of them are, but I know I am.
There you go. Well, I just want to make a quick statement, guys. As most of you are well aware, we used to be known as Gunning Around. We did 34, 35 episodes with those under that name. But due to circumstances beyond our control, we've decided to change the name of this show and moving forward with just Kurt and I. With that being said, we are the same show and we will be having, some special news here. We're going to incorporate every week a rotating guest host. So welcome, Jay, Kurt's friend.
Thank you.
He's our first one, and if it works out good, we might have you stick around. We'll see. This is a tryout.
I appreciate the opportunity.
He's a good kid.
Now I'm nervous that I'm doing
this. Right, we're putting you on the spot, eh? Yeah. But this is a great opportunity for you guys as the listeners to come on. Or if you want to be part of the show, let us know. Hit us up on Facebook or Instagram or our email or our website. Let us know. We'll make arrangements. We'd love to have you guys come on the show. Thanks to Jay. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
Yeah. So speaking of
opportunity for different guests, different perspectives. There's a fairly rigorous initiation process, though. It may involve animals.
Yeah,
it may involve a lot of personal things, but it's the price you pay for getting on a podcast.
Right.
I didn't know that was. This comes after the show. Then I'm looking forward to the initiation.
Well, it depends on how it goes. I mean, it may be actually videoed. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's a reason Kurt invited you into his basement.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to becoming frightened.
Sweetie, can you lock the door now, please?
Yeah.
All right, who are we?
Who am I? I kind of got to start off in hunting early. My family was involved, competitive trap shooting and hunted everything under the sun. I dad grew up on the farm, and he quit hunting around the time I came around, but I just fell in love with everything I had seen my uncles doing. That evolved into, I always like to understand equipment in any sport I do. And that got me into just becoming obsessed with long distance shooting. Of course, you can spend a lot of time in the reloading room figuring that stuff out. I became very diligent about learning as much as I possibly could about hand loading to make my long distance shooting better. I've shot quite a few years. That's how Kurt and I met. And I'm also interested in archery. I've been involved in martial arts, skydiving my whole life, and I just really important to understand equipment, and that's kind of probably where I come in here with a hunting background and hand loading and long distance shooting.
That's a lot. You're a busy guy.
I have kids and a wife and stuff too. I don't know. It's kind of
secondary,
more
really.
of a hobby.
Yeah, more hobby than family stuff.
Nice.
Well,
I keep children in my home as a hobby.
Right.
They're mine. But,
right. Just as long as you stipulate that they are yours. Oh, where did John go?
Well, that's
sorry,
about yourself, Kurt.
Ran into the room. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. He can be on too. Is he doing all right?
Yeah, he just keeps getting out of bed. Sorry, guys. Anyway,
Yeah,
I am Sean.
To hide a rooster.
Well, he's like, is that Kurt? Are you doing the podcast? Yes, go to bed.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, as you guys are aware, I'll make this quick. My name's Sean. I'm an ag equipment service specialist for a large equipment manufacturer. I'm the father of a beautiful son who doesn't listen to me. I've recently decided to chase the dragon with supplementing my loss of ARs with long-range boomsticks. So here we go.
And man, did you take a dive into that already?
Holy.
Yeah, well, it's a deep hole now.
Diving in head first, though. That's how I do.
It's fun learning it. I'm kind of jealous of what you're going to go through. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that is kind of that. For lack of a better way, I hate describing it like this, but that journey,
the experience of learning it.
Absolutely,
absolutely.
You betcha. All right, everybody. I'm Rooster, as most of you probably know. Some people call me Rooster. Some people call me other things. I'm the long range precision guy. Not much of anything else, as many of you can attest. A pistol guy, just starting into shotguns again after 20 years or something like that. Really, other than that, I'm pretty basic. I do like
you're very good at what you basically do.
Right. Right. I'm decent. Yeah. All right. Rules of engagement we have. Find us.
Well, why don't we hear about maybe Shane could give us a bit about himself.
I suppose that's okay too.
Yeah,
right?
would that be
Shane, are you all right with that?
Yeah, sure. So
Shane Getson, everyone.
Here we go. Yeah. So I'm recently won a popularity contest. So I've been a politician all of 1 year. Prior to that, I never got into politics. And as far as the firearms, well, we grew up with them out in the farm. So I grew up out by a place called Chip Lake. My grandpa had homesteaded out there in about 1918, so kind of cut a swath of tract out of the bush and started homesteading. So growing up in the farm, we had lever actions. We had a couple 20 gauges and a 12 gauge. And obviously the little workhorse for me was the little 22 long rifle. And we had cattle growing up, mixed farming. We would do logging operations as well. So kind of setting the picture for you. I know in Saskatchewan, you got lots and lots of open places, except for up the north, but we kind of have a mix out here. So with that, with the animals that we have, we ran cattle as well. You would have the predators. So what I would literally do is, a normal thing as a school kid, you'd get off the bus, go back in the bush, take the 22 and the dog with you, and go check the fences for the cattle. And obviously with the predators, you would have the occasional coyote that would come across and needed to be either dispatched or persuaded to leave the calves alone and get away from the herd.
Right.
As far as hunting, my dad wasn't really into hunting much, so not anything for the big game, but my uncles were. And, going out in the back and at the appropriate time of the season and popping, prairie chickens or spruce grouse is what we have out here. So that's kind of what I grew up with. So, roll the shot clock forward after graduating, getting into college and going off and working, and then end up getting married. And that was when the long gun registry first came out. That debacle, Trudeau Part 1, let's put it in that way.
Yeah.
So when that thing came out, I really got interested in firearms again because I was concerned that a person wouldn't have access to them. And the way I looked at it, my son was about about a year and a half, 2 years old at that time. And it was almost that thing that, do you raise them up around the firearms like I was taught? We didn't run around pointing anything at anyone else. Everything that we had was treated as if it was live, it was loaded. Water pistols, that was maybe the exception. There was no first person shooter things. There was none of that going on. Like, we were very much disciplined that, range safety right from day one with anything we did. So when I was looking at that registry, it was almost like the spinning wheel and Sleeping Beauty. So do you have your little ones involved with it? You teach them how to do it, or do you take that risk of not having them around and then running that risk of them stumbling across it at a friend's house or some other place and having that incident? So obviously I chose the foremost, and that's when I really did that deep dive into finding out what a restricted firearm was, the non-restricted. At that time, went and just went to a gun shop. It was actually Mill Arms, and spoke to the guy there and said, well, what do I have to do to buy a rifle? And, well, what kind do you want? Well, I kind of like that one. So I'm pointing at the wall at certain ones. And he says, well, you need your license. Do you have your license? No, I do not. So it was that whole process of learning how it works. And ended up really getting a kick out of target shooting. Again, on the farm, it was one of those things it was a working tool, and you maybe pop cans once in a while, but started getting into the target shooting and was never really around pistols. Picked up a couple pistols and started doing that. And I'll roll the clock ahead a little bit further on that. And it was last 3 years ago, ran across the Canadian Historical Arms Society. So I was a member of that, Onowish Fishing Games, Brisbane Gun Club. But there was a gentleman that I was looking for doing work in the States and or doing some training in the States. And obviously you guys have been down there. It's difficult bringing your own stuff with you, and you have to use somebody else's, and they may not train, someone who's not from the U.S. So I ran across that Canadian Historical Arms Society. It was Ben Click, so Sierra Riflecraft or Sierra 64. Now if anyone knows in the long game, he's a master sniper and a pathfinder, one of which there's only like 400 in Canadian history. I mean, it's a pretty elite group. So when he starts teaching courses, and he was former airborne as well, and he has access to some of the guys that did the close quarter combats type thing, I was really interested in learning how to run my own kit. So my own modern sporting rifle, that was from Alberta Tactical, one of the modern hunters. I took that to Ben's course for the long range. So, he dialed that in, showed me how to do it, the breathing control, everything else. And it just blew my mind. It's my former life being on major projects and running major projects. You do these management training courses. And I'll tell you, bar none, the best management training course I've ever had was Ben Click's long range class. The ability to control your thoughts, to control your mind, to be able to see empirical evidence of you changing those parameters. That was absolutely mind blowing. And then, his counterparts there that did the close quarter items, we were doing carbine and pistol training. So now you go from the long range stuff where you're completely zenned out to having somebody yelling and screaming at you in your ear under time conditions, and you're popping targets as quick as you can, and they're messing with your kit, so you have misfires. I mean, it was amazing. So when you start looking at that dynamic training, it gives you a real line of sight towards what guys have to do this for a living that might have things coming back at them downrange. But when you take a civilian and you put it in context, when I go out into the bush now and I go hunting with my son for deer, there is complete control under pressure, under duress. You get into that Zen moment and you can execute. And again, it's just one of those things. So that's what I really liked about it. And what I would do is introduce people from my project teams. The first thing I would do for team building exercises is you get a bunch of new people, take them to the firing range, take them to a gun range. Right. You might do these trust exercises where you fall back into other people's arms. But when you're standing on a gun range, when you got everyone for the first time, popping rounds off downstream, that really binds the team together. There's a trust exercise there. So that's kind of my background. I really like doing that. My kids, they all shoot as well. And we start out right with the pellet guns. We have it on our own. I'm lucky enough to have 40 acres here, and we have our own little gun range down back. So we can take our non-restricted items down there. And the kids learn that from day one with pellet guns, and then start to graduate into, the little 22s, and then get up to 223 and then 308 caliber type rounds.
Yeah, that's a good progression for sure.
Well, and it's Myself, I have an old lever action 30-30. That's kind of it. I have the SKS that's kind of in a Woodstock, but everything else that I got into is either direct impingement or, just different type of items. And everything I was looking at was based on some research and engineering on it, and looking for what was the most modular, the best tool that I could get for the dollar. And it was always going to be my proficiency that was going to be the variable. So again, it's the things that I stumble with and talk to the non-gun crowd, that the folks that don't deal with that, is why would you need something like an AR platform? Well, when you look at the epitome of modularity, and you look at the evolution,
all I've been getting for why do you need that? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, well,
why do you need that?
And I kind of put it to other people. Why do you need a sports car? Why do you need a sport bike? Why you don't need it, but it's sure as the hell nice to have in a free country when you've deserved it, worked hard for it, and that's part of freedom, and that's what it should be.
And are responsible with it. That's
absolutely
the thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
So when it comes to that, the other thing that I don't mean to ramble on here, guys, but when we start talking about this, and it's to the non-firearms community, it's easy talking to the same people that know what you're talking about. When you talk to somebody who doesn't, it's trying to put it in context of, this is a sport, it's a recreation. You've got the most law-abiding citizens doing it. In actuality, when we start trying to defend these freedoms, it's not for the people that own them as much as it is for the people who will never have the opportunity to own them. That can never actually get into these sports and can never progress into it. And it's interesting to hear that, a lot of the ladies that come to it that maybe haven't been brought up around it on farm or otherwise, but they end up falling into trap shooting. They end up falling into target shooting. They end up falling into long range stuff. And I mean, you pick up some of the gun magazines from the States, and there's so many stories of that, ladies that after the kids are finally gone and out of the house, they pick up a hobby, and lo and behold, it's going to the gun range and doing some long distance shooting or some 3-gun. It's an amazing thing for people of all ages, backgrounds. One of my best friends I met at one of those courses, a carbine course. He's a Fijian guy, about maybe 5'1", and he's an emergency room physician. So when you see the two of us, we probably never would have crossed paths unless it was at the gun range.
Yeah. Well, you talk about that camaraderie and team building and all that kind of stuff. And can you imagine, as we have it right now, we have those things available to us, maybe in a little bit more restricted form now, but that's open to anyone. And now what the current government wants to achieve is to take that community away from everyone, that sense of a community, that sense of team and camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. That's a travesty beyond most. It feels like, anyways.
Well, it is, and it's like any other pastime. And I just shared with you guys here a little bit before we went live. So I don't get too many times to myself. And if the weather lines up and the stars line up and everything else, I was fortunate enough to work my back end off, and I also wanted to become a pilot ever since I was a kid. So, saved up over the years, managed to get my pilot's license, bought my own aircraft. So one of the biggest things that I can do is when those stars align is literally jump up, head to the airport, grab my plane. And today I just literally flew up to Lac La Biche. It's a 3-hour drive if you're going there, but I could whip up there in an hour and see my father-in-law the day before Father's Day. Like, I can squeeze that in and whip back home. It's no different with me and my rifles. If I want to take the kids down back, it's a full day exercise to maybe even go shoot a round of golf, and cost prohibitive in that sense. But the kids, they look forward to it when they know that Dad comes home and we have an hour and a half. We can literally just grab our kit, get ready, go down in the backyard, and we can shoot pop cans and all those type of things in the backyard. And my little girls hammered through 750 rounds of pellet gun, pellets. Like, they're avid shooters. They love this, and they're 9 and 10 years old, right?
Yeah, man. And you'd spend that money time and time again, wouldn't you?
yeah, nonstop. And honestly, when you go back to the roots of the shooting, and when you grab the little pellet rifle, and it's kind of a joke here. I've got this one that's kind of, it's magenta. Actually, it's called a spade. It's pink. Like, I got this rifle. It's pink for my daughter. So the kids.
You were going to say magenta.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really a chuckle. My little girls get a kick out of it when Dad picks up the pink gun and we're all shooting pop cans together. So.
Right. Yeah, Dad's
okay. 2020, Shane. We don't judge.
Yeah.
That is funny.
One of the other things that, Shane, the way you put it is that that I see that the general public that aren't involved in shooting, and just from a competitor's point of view, and I think any competitor is I almost got goosebumps when you're talking about your breathing control and the level of education you got in these shooting courses. And when I see that somebody gets gripped by the desire to just be better at anything. And I think the general public just sees, you're a guy shooting a gun in the air like Yosemite Sam. And this is a really sport that you put thought into, and can become passionate about this, achieving the small group or the, score and that sort of thing. And that, to me, that's the biggest thing, is just a competitor in anything. I think if you went to any other athlete and they said, why do you need that? And you said, listen,
right,
if you got a hint of what I feel for this, you would it's just a level that people that will never pick up a firearm and have just resigned that they're bad things. It's just unfortunate they'll never get that passion. Probably some of them will never have that passion about anything, but it's just amazing. Like I said, the journey of learning the long distance stuff and going through and really tightening your hand loading and stuff. Like I miss learning all that. And you can always learn more, but it's just, there's such a curve in that. And I just wish there was a way to communicate with the general public like that, but it's just so hard.
Well, you can, it seems, but they don't, they refuse a lot of the time to make the connection. Like you can touch on something that they find, what do you want to say, Zen-like or satisfaction, what they get a lot of satisfaction from. But they'll time and time again, they'll tell you that's apples and oranges.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a mindset. If you don't have that reciprocation from the audience that you have, it's tough to get that point across. All we can do is just keep trying and relate it to something that
I just like the way you communicated that. And I think it's important that people see it when they say, why do you need that? And they understand this is a passion of a sport and an achievement, that you're trying to better yourself in these ways. And I think there's a lot of people don't understand, I mean, I semi-professionally skydived for 13 years and competed at a national and world level. And the people, I didn't even know you could compete in that, and then I think there's people I didn't even know, like, what's a shooting competition?
Right.
Everything is a competition.
Yeah. It's going to be the best guest host podcast of all time.
That's right. I was thinking
that Ben had mentioned a book, and when he starts going through that, and you long range guys, I mean, it's so damn cerebral, it's wild. I mean, you start looking at temperatures and elevations and humidity factor, start stretching out the Coriolis effect, and I mean, you have winds that are changing 4 or 5 times by the time you get your target down to the end. It's absolutely wild. But when he had mentioned this book, so there's the combat breathing that's been around since the Romans age, and trying to settle it down. Any martial art that whether it's an Asian martial art or a European martial art, you get into that same thing of controlling body and mind. And when you want to talk about folks that go to their Lululemon stretch outfits and do yoga, it's no different in the sense that you're trying to get inside your own head and to manage and control your breathing and everything else. Now, the book that Ben had mentioned was With Winning in Mind, and it was a fantastic story. And I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was a high caliber shooter. He goes over to the Olympics. He's on the U.S. team, and he just kills it. Like, he just wins everything. He goes back to his next Olympics, and then he was told just before the competition, there's over 30 million people watching you today. Like, any pressure? And it just messed the guy. Right. He didn't even, so then he just blew it the next time. And what he wanted to do then is he went to the highest performing athletes, and he wanted to understand how it worked with them, what they did. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, and I was surprised when I heard it. He went to the bodybuilders and the major heavy lifting guys, like the dead weight lifting guys, and he asked them, how much of it is physical training and how much is it mental training? Those guys said it's 98% mental, the rest is physical training. So he started looking at the most elite athletes, and then he started applying that. And those are the principles of understanding your own makeup, about your primal side of your brain, your cognitive side of the brain, and then the other one that's running around doing everything at any given moment. And once you start controlling that, so when you long range guys are sitting there and you're getting all zenned out, controlling your breathing, and you're thinking reticle, 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 and then you surprise yourself with that crisp snapshot. That's literally what you're doing. You're starting to understand and mind map yourself and get back into that physiology of how we tick and work. And the only way you can achieve that high level of proficiency is when you literally can get inside your own head. And the repeatability on that is no small feat. Any elite athlete that gets out there and can do that under pressure and to do it nonstop and to continue to do that, that's the same as our long range guys. It's the same as our special forces folks. That's the elitist of it. So when you take Gretzky and Lemieux and you give them a firearm, it's the same type of thing. It's at that level of proficiency. And that's what folks can't appreciate because, again, the left holds the narrative that you're just Yosemite salmon it out there. They can't understand it. And you got to get folks into understanding that there's different levels of proficiency in shooting. And the repeatability, like the targets at the end don't lie. You have a bad hair day, it shows up down there all over the place. If you're on and you get in your mind, you're touching targets. Like, it's phenomenal.
So what's it like trying? You said the left controls the narrative. So what has it been like trying to explain that to the opposition in your parliament?
Well, the opposition in our place, so I shared with you guys last time that we had a similar motion when Bill C-71 came out. We had suspected that the Liberals might be up to something in the fall. And we had Minister Nixon, he's our Minister of Environment and Parks down here. And he put forward a motion basically saying the Parliament itself, the Legislative Assembly, that we would support and make sure that we stood up for Albertans basically with their sports, the responsible use of firearms, ownership, etc. We voted all in favor. It was both the NDP and the Conservatives, UCP here. We all voted in favor of that motion. And there was a couple of us that called a thing called division. And what you do is after the vote passes, a verbal vote, if you stand up, well, then they take a 15-minute pause. They bring back all the members to make sure everyone's there. And you physically stand up and your name is recorded on what you voted for legislation. It was unanimous. I honestly thought that would happen again when it came to Bill 20, which specifically laid out the same lines, like go after the bad guys, reinforce the laws, protect the rights and freedoms of the Albertans here with responsible gun ownership. And by the way, the Liberal gun grab is bad. The opposition stood apart from us. I believe we had 40.
Any idea why? Like that's a complete swing from the last time. Was it just a mistake the first time?
No, I don't believe so. I think it was at the time they found it was probably innocuous. There wasn't much to it. Now that you've seen the alignment of the NDP and the Liberals on so many levels, if they stood apart on this, well, then they actually would have been representing, I believe, the best interest of Albertans, but it wouldn't have been representing the narrative of where their alignment is.
That alignment now is thankfully quite shaky now, it seems like, anyway.
I don't know. Like, honestly, it's if you nail down a bag of crazy cats and you can tell me how they're going to act every time you open it.
Just start smashing Shane.
Well, it's to the context of you would think you kind of have an idea, but it was surprising and it was disappointing. But we did pass that. We are putting our own CFO in place. I think that was the press release that everyone had heard on that. So both with the firearms group that I'm part of now, the committee that I was named to by the Premier, there was three MLAs and a bunch of other really good folks in the firearms community, and former police chief as well. I mean, we have some really high caliber people. It's a real honor to be on there with them. But we're going to be working on that recommendations that we can bring forth to the our Solicitor General and Minister of Justice of recommendations that we can do to try to bolster up the protection for the responsible firearms owners. And one of those was a no-brainer, same as out of our Fair Deal panel, was to get us our CFO, get that in place. So we'll keep chipping away at it.
So what does that look like? That committee, what are you going to be working on? How are you going to present whatever it is that you are working on? Is it sort of paralleling the Fair Deal sort of narrative, I guess?
Yeah, it'll be similar in the sense that what we'll do is lots of consultation again. We have a mandate, and I don't have it in front of me. I apologize, guys, with the technical glitches there. I didn't get as prepared as I should have been. So I don't have motion 20 in front of me to read back to you, and I don't have the specifics on the mandate that were handed to us. But there's a mandate letter that's issued from the Minister of Justice, and then that's basically sits the frame in the context of what he's looking for consultation. what we'll end up doing is a lot of town halls. We'll end up reaching out to a lot of the gun clubs and the non-gun owners. So literally, it's going to be a truth and reconciliation, or hearts and minds, and also getting consultation from the broader group of Albertans, not just polarized, and to have their feedback and also potentially some of that education of it as well. So when you're talking about gun laws, when you're talking about these different platforms that people may have misconceptions, they'll have their chance to tell us how they feel, whether they're on side with this gun ban, whether they're not, or if they have recommendations going forward, whether that's legal items, whether it's different permissions, whether it's something to do with the CFO in those contexts. So it's literally going to be a broad depth dialogue. We then compile all that information, recommendations, and then we take that forward and say, here's 20 items. We think you can execute the top 10. These are the other ones that are maybe long reach. Maybe there's 2 of them that are immediate.
The strategy that moving forward to convince, maybe whether it's at the town halls, I guess the success that the long gun registry went away. There's argument that it was that our argument, the pro gun argument, was there was better ways to spend the money to keep the public safe than registering a bunch of long guns. Is this strategy something you're going to use this time around? Say, I think we have an uphill battle. People, I think I mentioned on the last one, it's trying to get sympathy with a small amount of us, and and it's AR-15s, and we know they're, there's such an evil firearm in quotes and that sort of thing. It's hard to convince people otherwise. That might be a hard thing to change people's minds. But if you say, listen, rather than banning these, if we were to crack down on border stuff and look after gangs and other stuff, is that a strategy you're kind of looking at, or what strategy?
Not necessarily a strategy in so much as getting people's feedback from it. So when you look at the AR-15 platform in specifics, it's a direct impingement semi-automatic rifle, 223 caliber. And if you look at the AR-10s, well, it's a 308 caliber. When you have folks that aren't familiar with this pattern of rifle, so even let's say the bolt guys, the standard guy that takes out his bolt gun, goes out hunting once a year and he parks it after that, and he never goes out again until next fall.
He's still on the same box of ammunition he was 20 years ago,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So when they're doing that, and hopefully he's got a deer every year for every round that's out there, but they always talk better than what actually happens because they don't shoot as much, they're not as proficient. But when he's sitting out there going, well, they're not coming after me, and I don't know why you need that plastic toy gun anyway. When you take it down to the basics and say, okay, look, if you had a bar rifle, a 30-06, and you've been running that old bar, it's been a fantastic hunting rifle. It's no different than my FNAR in 308. Mine's black. I put a pistol grip on it because it fits me better and it's just more ergonomic. And when I look at the AR platforms, or the quasi AR platforms that are non-restricted still, that's what I decide to take to the bush with me to hunt. It's because I'm familiar with the pattern, the layout, the ergonomics are there. And no, by the way, it's just as friggin' accurate as your bolt gun. And I've got the paper to prove it from that course I took with Ben Click at 300 meters. So
go easy there, Shane. Come on.
That's part of the narrative, right? Is that when you're having these dialogues, you can't let us, because we have different disciplines and different likes on our choice of selection, to say, well, it's not going to affect me because they're just taking your stuff and you don't need it anyway. And conversely, I'm not doing the same thing, going after the bolt guys, because you don't need that anyway, because that's not what I shoot. Right. But there's the broader sense of people that just don't know because they've been fed a line of BS. And if you pick up any video, you look at it, or if you look in any magazine, and all of a sudden you see a select fire weapon being used, typically right now, everything out there that is a soldier's weapon has a collapsible buttstock and has a pistol grip. They immediately think that that's the same. And I put it in the context of folks that it's saying that, a Ferrari race car is not a Fiero. It doesn't matter how much you strap onto the Fiero, it's not the same. And it's literally letting folks understand what is afoot, what they've been fed is a line of BS. And to the public safety side, if I was any one of those folks down in Nova Scotia, and that was one of my loved ones that had that madman do what he did, and all you're going to do is go after something completely innocuous that isn't related and not actually solve the problem, I would be jumping up and down.
Oh, just losing shit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, so when it comes back to that narrative, that's exactly what we're trying to talk about. And if you're looking at the dollars and cents of it, we're going to spend over $1.7 billion buying back guns that you're going to devalue in a marketplace from, law-abiding Canadian citizens, but you're only spending $17.5 million every year in Canadian borders and customs.
That
Maybe you should
blows
actually
my mind.
Well, and they just spent $3.2 million sending out a letter to every registered PAL holder, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money that they could have spent elsewhere. So, but my argument, or not argument, to that when people say, why do you need an AR? Why do you need to, go hunt with that or whatever? It's like, I don't. Why do you need a Chevy 1500 half ton 2020 when you could go get a Model T? It's for ease of use, easy convenience. Like,
well, and it's also generational too. When you look at most of the the guys in the 30, 40 year age bracket now, they have both in their cabinets. And if you looked at every major conflict, when the surplus firearms are sold off to the and sporterized to the hunters and the farmers and everybody else, this is where we're at. And again, this platform is 70 years old. It's been refined a bit along the way, so we've kind of grown up with this stuff now. It's not what my great grandpa used to use. It's what maybe my father-in-law used to use when he was serving. And the other side of it too, when you start collecting these and then you start geeking out, like I have a bit, not on the long range stuff, but some of this other stuff I like, is when Colt Damaco, as an example, when the special forces units around the world go after a Canadian product and buy it for a certain reason because our spec type far exceeds what's used in the U.S. military, except for the special forces guys that, by the way, buy our product. What other better token of symbolism and respect that I can offer for our service members than to buy a piece of something that they would have used, or it looks like it off the same assembly line, with the exception that mine is semi-automatic versus what they actually use, and have that Canadian flag in the corner and have that piece of modern Canadian history. I don't know why we would want to take that away from folks to be proudly stand up for our country.
Can we get to some of the questions that we've had coming in? There's several good ones here. Where did Oscar had a good one to lead it off here? Any idea on timeline for hiring a CFO? I know Saskatchewan already advertised the job. So what do we have in Alberta there, Shane?
Well, I can't give you an exact date, but it's going to be real friggin' quick.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, the nice thing with, and I'm, obviously speaking pretty freely here, the guys this weekend, so I'm not, not in my official MLA capacity by any means, but, when we're doing this, when this government takes action and we do things, we get at it pretty quick. And, we're the only legislative assembly sitting in North America right now full time. And when you look at the amount of legislation that we push through, it literally blows everybody away. We've got one of the hardest working, most dedicated, government groups out there. Our premier is, I'm going to brag him up a bit. I mean, this guy just does not stop. He's a machine. So when we commit it and we say we're going to make it happen, it's going to happen.
Good. Yeah, he is pretty on top of it, isn't he?
Yeah, I had a chance out in my constituency. He was out here Friday afternoon, and I got to show him around how I couch at God's country out in my area. And the guy just does not stop. I was riding along with him. He's he's on top. He's again one of those elite type people in his field. It's amazing.
Good. Daniel Crossland has a question here too. Shane, is there an avenue for Albertans to get in touch with the group for concerns as we as shooters in Alberta are facing?
So say that one again, please.
Is there an avenue for Albertans to get in touch with the group for concerns we as Albertans, or we as shooters in Albertans are?
I think he means by group, the committee.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what you're going to see is we had our very first meeting was last week, Monday, and we're literally just pulling everything together, and that'll be inclusive of coming up with those consultation things that I said, plus we'll have a website that'll be very similar to what the red tape reduction was. So you'll have a portal that can go in, give us your ideas and your concerns. We're going to get that rolling here over the next couple of weeks. So absolutely, we really want to hear what matters to you.
Awesome. That's a bit of a switch from the norm. It seems like actual public consultation.
Yeah, we want full-on participation and make sure we're accessible on this. And I appreciate that comment. It might not be normal for everyone else, but we're pretty serious about us.
That's good. Good.
Awesome. Todd Wilson, friend of the show, had a question. Is there any interprovincial consultation happening or is it provinces going at it piecemeal?
Yeah, so within each jurisdiction, at this point, I believe each jurisdiction is kind of doing their own. But if you can see, when we did the carbon tax challenge, obviously we had our own court cases, and we also signed on with a couple others. I think that there might be some opportunity for that, but nothing has been formalized at this point. Personally, I would like to really tag up with Saskatchewan and see what they're thinking and make some of those calls. But I can't commit to that right now, but I think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that we really should do, especially up in this Western province.
Well, I can get you in touch with
Minister where BC is that? Say that again, Sean.
Sorry. I can get you in touch with Minister Jeremy Harrison, Shane.
Perfect. Yeah, please feel free to share information. And Michaela, our MLA, MLA Glasgow. Sorry, I'm a little tired here these days, guys. She's going to be our chair of it. And once we start doing these, we'll reach out chair to chair of these groups. And if they need to contact our minister, then it's chain of command. It's no different than the military thing. We just have to hit the right chains of command to get the folks talking.
Right.
Chain of command, is that the chain that you beat the Liberals back with, or?
You guys are going to get me in trouble. I can't commit to that.
Sorry.
Select fireman.
That's right.
Up there, rural internetos. Yeah.
Friend of the show, Jesse LaPlante has another question. We're just going to come rapid fire at you, Shane. Sorry, dude.
Oh, this is good.
Question. I know firearms are federally regulated, but is there any way possible that Alberta would be able to create its own firearms program separate from the CFP?
The short answer is no.
Correct.
So again, it's federally regulated. We're going to look at that as part of the committee to see what levers and what opportunities we have, whether it's under property rights or anything else that's granted to the jurisdiction provincially. But what we'll be looking for is every opportunity that we can look at to challenge, and that we can actually draw a line in the sand and make sure that we hold our own. And if we have to slow dance a few items, then maybe that's what we start looking at here too. But again, we can't overrule federal law. That would have to be challenged constitutionally. And again, it comes down to those designate levels of authority and who has which jurisdictions.
Interesting. Okay. Let's keep rolling here. Mike Heineck I believe he's in Lloydminster, says, here we go. Alberta provincial sound suppressor licenses. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's a ways down the road. A long
ways.
But, and therein lies something too. I mean, when you look at Europe, predominantly they have a lot of suppressors because of the hunting. They understand it's decibels. In the States, you have to have a special permit for it. And, they talk about the trusts and how they can be gifted. And up here, they're just completely verboten. So again, it depends on which culture, which jurisdiction. But right now, I mean, quite honestly, that's a thing I would love to have sometime down the road. But honestly, I'd just like to be able to go to the gun range and use my ARs right now before we lose any more.
Correct.
So we got to pick our heels.
Yeah. We've lost so many rights already that we have to win them back in inches, right? And going right to suppressors is probably not the best idea. We have to win back what we've lost already, right? So,
do I think they make a lot of sense? I mean, if you're sitting there and you can reduce the sound and you're using it in a range or applications where it makes sense, absolutely. Because I mean, the first time I went to an actual gun,
my neighbors would be happy.
It's loud, right?
Yeah. Well,
there's been a number of
density. Sorry, Sean.
No, there's ranges in Alberta that have fought or that have been shut down due to neighbor noise complaints. So, that could potentially help. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, don't let fear and common sense enter the conversation. I mean, that's
hell no.
Dealing with, right?
Right. Yeah. If we had population density like they do in Europe, it would be much more, or at least much more closely to a real consideration than we have now. It's just not. It's just not even anywhere close to that yet. Matt Shirley, Shane. Yeah. Is there any talk of Alberta joining in on any legal actions against the federal government, such as the one put forward by the CCFR?
Not to my knowledge yet. Again, those are things that we're trying to explore or potentially would explore in that council. But again, if somebody else has the legal wherewithal and the dollars and cents to go after it, I think a lot of the best avenues that we can look at is maybe it's something different. So if you're to all sign on to one boat and see if that's what's going to carry you there, or maybe you have a flotilla going out and then approach it from a different angles. So at this point, no.
Okay.
Kelly's got an interesting one.
Oh,
You
yeah.
see that, Sean?
Yeah.
Are you accepting any Ontario refugees? Or what type of consultations are taking place with peers in other provinces?
Well, fellas, it's pretty interesting. So when I did that, my speech on Motion 20 there, and I think you guys have seen it now, the Premier was actually in the House there, and Member Scowwood actually conceded some of his time and gave me a full 20 minutes to talk to it. So I think the plain talk resonated, and I think the fact that I didn't get too technical resonated with the firearms community, but moreover the non-firearms community. Right. I literally had from coast to coast people commenting on that. Nova Scotia, Ontario, Northern Quebec, right across the prairies, out of British Columbia, and even in the Yukon and Northwest Territories. So we're all in this one. I hate to use that we're all in this together stuff. It's been overused. But honestly, this is something when we break down the boundaries and the issues, the left is really great at dividing and conquering.
Yep.
And we really have to get over the, fighting to the death over the last 20% we might not all be inside with, and be happy with the 80% that we agree to. And I kind of put it in context to a few folks that were, hard right or wanting something that was just more than potentially within our grips. And, I'd said, if I can get 80% consensus with my wife 80% of the time, I am walking on water in my world.
Right. Yeah.
So why is it that we'll fight to the death over the last 20% and we'll lose the whole battle here because the left know us better than ourselves?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, backing up just a little bit, we were talking about interprovincial stuff. We haven't heard anything coming out of BC. Any idea where they're at with all this stuff?
Officially, no. But when I start looking at BC, it's an interesting dynamic. When you look at the Fraser Valley and down towards Victoria, it's very urbanized and that type of thing. The shooters down there, they're kind of mixed. They're hunters, but a lot of, sports shooting as well. When I get outside of those jurisdictions, I would say that they're more in tune and more akin with the culture of Alberta, in the context where we've got a less dense population once you start getting away from the major centers.
A little more
and those
industrial.
guys are right on line with us. Like if I go out to Vernon, for example, I was a gun member of the gun club out there too. Fantastic group. They're on side. When you look at those type of folks, the Kelowna Gun Club, I think Caliber magazine now, the publisher of that now moved up to Kelowna from the Lower Mainland. So it depends which part of BC. So are they holistic as well? No. Did I get a lot of comments from the guys out in BC and the ladies out in BC? Absolutely. So honestly, where I was talking before is that we have to get better at organizing.
Yep.
We're always the silent, quiet type and the strong and silent type that never really gets involved with these things. And, I was being challenged too by a lot of our constituents and our crowd saying, well, go out there and fix this. Well, this isn't an army of one thing. This literally is making sure that you make your voices heard. I'm doing everything I can to get the message out there. And just like you guys are with this podcast, and it's really coming up in its hearts and minds and doing that. And that's how you get the attention of the mainstream media. So there was my first protest ever, or my first rally ever. I heard about it on a Friday afternoon. It was taking place on a Saturday afternoon. So a really well-intentioned young fellow out here, Kyle, a shout out to him. He shoots IPSC. He's represented the Alberta team. He got together on social media and said, hey, let's have something that we can talk about. And there was only about 150 people there, but they were very boisterous, 150 people. And the media shows up for it. So I literally gave an interview, about a 2-minute interview for Global Television. And I understand that, Patrick, a shout out to him, the cameraman that did that. I know that the television thing, they only have 1.5 minutes to put this on. So things are edited and cut. But he probably was the closest to the mark and caught the spirit and the intent of that gathering, that rally, and took the parts and pieces that I had spoke about, and it was probably most true and genuine. The Edmonton Journal, however, spliced together parts of a 5 or 10 minute speech I gave, took a couple sentences here and there, and then still had the same rhetoric at the bottom of the caption saying, M16s and M4s, the people are upset because they can't have them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so disingenuous. So the only way that we get people's attention is to work together, make sure you show your support. And if someone's bold enough to put together a protest or a rally and get there, make sure you get off the couch and go help them out and show up.
Yeah, and if you're going to show up, please, for the love of Christ, don't show up in body armor and camo and balaclavas. That sends the wrong message. You know, be professional. Right. Yeah. Save it for Aristotle.
And that's it. So you don't have to pitch the same message to the same guys that go to the range. We know you do that. But there was one comment that came back from a gentleman that attended the rally in Edmonton. He says, I brought 3 non-firearms owner people with us. And he said it was going pretty good until somebody grabbed the microphone and started, ranting and raving. And then they closed off, they turned off. Yep. So again, guys, it's not to show how mad and frustrated you are to the politicians that get it. It's not to show how mad and frustrated you are to the politicians that don't. It's to talk to the masses so they understand why we're concerned and why we're actually the leading edge, the canary in the coal mine, if you would, on their rights and freedoms being eroded without anyone to step in and stand for them.
We have to speak to people with the thought in your mind that you're educating them, not arguing with them.
Yep.
And I think the problem is that there's, this is upsetting. I'm a big fan of the M1A and I have more than one that I used to ride with me out to the range when I was shooting long range. I'd always have my shorty with me, and I'm going to miss that, and I'm upset about it. But getting angry about this kind of thing to a non-gun, you're not changing any minds there. We have to think about this strategically and not, showing up and I have no problem with everybody wearing camo and have the Browning sticker on your truck and doing all this stuff. But we need to figure out who we're talking to and who we're trying to convince, and being overly bold isn't going to win the argument.
That's the thing. Any idiot can get angry and pump fists and all that kind of stuff. And we see that all the time from the left. And what sort of respect does that gain them from us? Right.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't at all. And you come out with intelligent arguments and good talking points. And then people will actually at least entertain you, start to listen to some of the stuff. But if you come out with anger right away or aggression of any sort, they'll dismiss you immediately.
Yeah,
and that's the last thing we need.
Well, yeah, and I got into a debate on social media the other day with a hard dipper, like diehard NDP, and he was saying that I'm a fascist for believing in conservative values and restricting spending, but still advocating, like I was still advocating for arts spending and that sort of thing within reason. Like, we can't be dumping $900 million into Africa for a possible seat on the UN Security Council and then have it blow back in our face. That's ridiculous. But they don't listen to that. But I was trying to say, hey, like, we need to be responsible here, because it's not going to be us that are paying for it. It's going to be like my boy, who just showed up again, by the way.
That's still going to be living at home when he's 32.
Well, because his income tax rate's going to go to 60%. And it's ridiculous. So anyway, back to firearms. It's a tough climate right now, and there's a lot of the non-gun owning public who are seeing what the mainstream media, like the CBC, the CTV, to a point global, the Star, the Sun News Network, Edmonton Journal, and that sort of thing, that are putting out this narrative because they got a paycheck and from the government, and anyway, we're kind of going around in circles, but. Daniel Crossland, friend of the show. Shane, I'm seeing a trend and wondering if you could comment whether it's a possibility if Alberta has a provincial police force, can we achieve a sanctuary province? I don't know what he's getting at there, but
I think there's a lot more to come into play before that.
Yeah. So when we talk provincial police forces, it's that was one of the things that came up as a recommendation from our fair deal panel as well. We're literally going to take that. The minister announced that he's going to take about a 1-year study on that. So there's dollars and cents that we have to look at, the actual deploying of the resources of it. We have to look at which portions of the law they would take care of, which arguably would be everything that the RCMP would do. But again, to keep it in context, fellas, there's only so many laws that we can change. There's only so much that we have jurisdiction. A lot of that comes down to property rights. So when you hear us talking about rural crime, and when you hear us stiffening penalties for, the protesters that show up in turkey farms and people can't get off, I mean, that's all trespass law and property rights. Those ones we can deal with. But if you're looking at anything that's federal that goes back to a constitutional thing, or life and limb, if you would, that's still a federal law that would have to be enforced regardless if it was OPP, CPP, or Alberta Provincial Police Force. They still have to enforce the laws.
So what, how will that tie in with the new provincial CFO role? Is it essentially going to be the same sort of stuff, or?
Yeah, so the CFO, so it's interesting though, there's interpretation of the act itself. And when you look at what would be a punitive or a criminal charge versus what potentially is an administrative charge, there is some latitude that the CFO has in how they look at the laws through that lens. I would believe that which CFO that we end up naming would look at it through the reasonable, responsible Alberta lens versus the potential other lens that's been used over the years. So when you look at acts that potentially are, if there was something in criminal in nature versus the intent of something that was an accident or administrative in nature. So you might get a fine versus a criminal record, or you might get a slap on the wrist versus go to jail. So that's really within the interpretation of the law and how the law is enforced. And I think it would be more reasonable and responsible for the way that we see law-abiding firearms owners.
So so how would the new CFO manage, burdens placed on small gun ranges like shrouding of steel poppers, and obviously public safety is number one, but I've never heard of somebody getting hurt by shrapnel from a steel target leaving the range, let's say. So
yeah, and we don't have those restrictions here. So again, each gun range is unique. Whether you're popping AR 500 or 550, obviously you don't want anything that's a mild steel. Of course. Again, some of the energy that we have out there. If you're in close proximity to residential versus out in the backwoods, middle of nowhere, there's some things there. The actual berms that they have, the line of fire, line of sight, everything else, that would still be in place. But I think when you talk to some of the gun ranges out in our areas, they've had hot and cold running water sometimes, depending on how responsive a CFO can be, how they look at or what additional items that they want. So again, if we're talking reasonable and practicalness, is the intent to slow dance everybody until they finally just give up? Or is it really to try to work with them to expedite a process so that people can actually go out and enjoy themselves in a responsible, safe manner? So again, it comes down to that individual enforcing laws through administrative and other measures to make sure that it's with the best intents. So again, to put it in context, if a cop pulls you over, does he throw you in jail right away? Or because you got a broken tail light? Or maybe he just gives you a warning and saying, fix your light, get your ticket, and show up.
More of a common sense approach is kind of what I'm getting from you guys, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And again, when we look at that lens, whomever that individual would be, obviously the individual now is obviously competent and skilled in their manner. But again, we're going to start utilizing that law at our disposal and put somebody in place that we believe philosophically would look at the lens in the way that we believe the Alberta people would want to be managed.
Interesting.
What sort of consensus are you seeing around the province with regard to this whole gun ban thing? Are you seeing it pretty divided, or are you seeing it one-sided one way or the other? How much public opinion have you been able to garner, I guess?
Well, and it's interesting. It's like attracts like, and that's part of the narrative, right? So a lot of the folks that follow what I do are already on side. But it was interesting to see that, again, when I made that speech in the House on Motion 20, that how many people had shared that. I think it's over 200 and some odd thousand now. So when I'm getting feedback from individuals that say, hey, I'm not a firearms owner, I don't necessarily agree you should have these things, but I'm really concerned about civil rights and freedoms now when I start looking into this. That's the crowd, and that's the people that we're reaching out. There isn't a major polarization in this. And when you look at our party, we had, again, our members spoke. We had ministers speaking on this. Minister of Health stood up and told everybody why this gun grab was wrong and why responsible citizens should be able to own them.
Well, that's the thing. It goes
told us
deeper
about
than
his,
just the damn guns, doesn't it?
It does, and that's the thing that folks
Way
have to
deeper.
understand. It's not just that they're taking property and devaluing it. It's the fact and the reason and the means that they're doing it and why. And moreover,
this is the start of the slope.
Well,
correct.
exactly.
But moreover, it's the insult to public safety. So to put it in context, when I was out running pipeline projects, if I had a line strike down in Minot, North Dakota, I'm jumping on a plane, whipping down there to do an evaluation of the incident that took place. If there was any possibility of occupational health and safety, whether it's Canadian or the otherwise, that found me as a manager or director of a major capital project, if we went bypass safety measures, if we didn't have protocols and procedures, well, by the way, I'm going to jail. The West Ray mine disaster proved that out time and time and time again. That's what is required by management. So let's put it in that same context. We've got a manager who's managing our country, that there was a major safety incident where there was fatalities out there, and they are not getting to the root cause and they're not causing the problem. To me, that is gross negligence.
Right.
Absolutely.
And when you put it in the context of that to regular open-minded folks, here's the issue. I'm not as mad about you taking my AR-15. I've got other ones. I'm a little upset that you keep taking everything that I really like, because it's what I like, and it doesn't make sense. But I'm really upset for is you're not going to save anybody else in my neck of the woods. You're not going to save anybody else down in Nova Scotia because you're ignoring the damn problem.
Yep. Yep. Well, and this all boils down to essentially property rights, right? Like and it doesn't just apply to guns. They're based on the not the Constitution, the Charter. The government can appropriate any piece of property you have without, reasonable compensation, right? So.
Right. And now where does it end?
Well, and that's the concerning part. So let's, and this is going to sound a little, maybe tinfoil hat, armadillo type thing. But if you were to use this as a litmus test, so you've already tested out in a portion of the population and you've tested out with certain types of property, as long as you get the mainstream on side, either they're apathetic or that you can kind of give them a line of BS and they kind of get it, you can then apply that model just about anything else that would be constituted as a type of property. So let's say that in, 20 years, anybody who has a Dodge Cummins is no longer to drive those vehicles and you have to buy a Tesla. Well, how do we get rid of, these type of items? Well, we just make them illegal and bad. Or maybe we start carbon taxing the heck out of everything until you can't afford your own property. Like this is...
Well, let's apply that to farming. Let's see how many electric tractors are out there.
Well, and that's
then
why
let's see where everybody's at.
Well, so my company developed a methane-powered tractor for that exact purpose, because that's what they see the world going to. And that's insane, especially since the EPA put so many regulations on diesel emissions and all that.
I'm boycotting your company, Sean.
That's okay.
And therein lies the crux. So when you have an ideological driven item and it's typically emotionally charged, like this issue is, because it gets people talking emotionally, and coming back to your point earlier, rather than having that rational dialogue, the best thing you can do to offset and get someone off their skates and off balance is to get them emotional about it, and then you can drive through the center. And what's even better, if you don't fight amongst each other, well, then they don't even pay attention to what you're doing. So when you look at the COVID response and you look at how the budget's been mismanaged and how the Constitution's been overridden and Parliament's not in place, they got us all talking on the gun show right now rather than talking about the real issue. His performance, the fact that they're unable to conduct and they're not taking care of public safety.
Well, that hole is so fucking deep, it's not even funny. I'm sorry, but Jesus. And that's exactly right. That deflection bullshit that they've got everybody so caught up in right now. The real issues are slipping through daily.
That's correct.
No
and
one's
when you
talking
talk
about anything
politics,
else.
I mean, it's no different than anything else. It's an orchestrated dance. You're actually doing this, and literally, it's feeding people information so you can get them react and elicit a certain response. They are fantastic at doing this. They've got us on our skates. They got us talking about this because we have to. But really, the dialogue should be about all of the other things that the grown-up conversation should revolve around, and just let us go out there and enjoy our pastime when we can get a 10-minute break.
Yeah, no kidding. Matt Shirley came up with a very timely comment. If the government sees this ban through OIC go through unopposed, what's to stop them from going after diesel engines next? Have to save the environment, right? Say goodbye to all farm equipment.
Well, and that's the scary part. I mean, honestly, our system of democracy is fantastic. It's not the best in the world, and it's not, it's got some hair on that dog for sure.
Yeah.
But the fact that we have such a good system in place, I don't believe that our forefathers have ever experienced people that would take liberties like they're doing with our system. And if you look at history, there's only been a few moments in time where democracies have been taken over by that. So it's literally these fail safes are starting to fail because they never would have imagined something like this happening. And it's that erosion by it. And that's where it really has a lot of us that are very frustrated. So you're right, the order and council context could be placed in the same thing if they passed a law in the House and if it was a majority that they started changing it. So if you go back to Bill 68, this started with Trudeau Sr. and he's been chipping away at it ever since until it got to the point where we're at now, and C-71 comes in and then. And you're right, if there isn't strong people standing up and running for politics and getting involved and getting engaged, the other side wins and they're way more patient at it and they're chipping away at it. They have the long range plan because the rest of us are all too busy to do something else about it until it's too late. And let's hope the boys that it's not too late step in there and get part of this.
Yeah, for sure. Ron and Ellen, the problem is that this has nothing to do with public safety. It's everything to do with perception and getting votes and emotion.
Absolutely.
I want to add.
And pandering. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and really what it comes down to is cheap political gains. And it's a numbers when they're looking at when they start to look at contemplating an election or anything else, then they start feeding this messaging out. And there's lots of polling that takes place. And if they can guarantee so many numbers, and it comes down to volume, who shows up to vote, what their voting blocks are like, and if they can hit those key points, then they get the numbers.
Yep, absolutely. Jay, you wanted to say something?
Well, just this emotional issue. It's just they're so good at taking this opportunity. How do you argue with the, loved ones? This is what we're going to do for the people, the victims in Nova Scotia, and the families are easy to convince. This is a tangible thing that, and there's just no, you can't argue with somebody who's lost somebody. And it's, again, just to reiterate this emotion in the argument it's an impossible argument, and it doesn't do well for people.
I would challenge you on that. Actually, I don't believe that there's any one single person from Nova Scotia that petitioned the Prime Minister to put this in place.
No, agreed. But I think they're using that as an excuse. Oh, obviously, we all know that's exactly what
absolutely
using it as an excuse.
That's one of the most disgusting things a person can do. It's disingenuous. And I put myself in that context. So one of our members, Martin Long here, he's MLA Long from West Yellowhead. His cousin was married to one of the other ones down there that actually had this happen to. So he's lost a second cousin, and put it in that context in this. It's very much hits close to home when we're talking about this. It's not because we're from a distance. I have family down there. I was supposed to go to a family reunion down in Lunenburg this summer, prior to COVID. So it's not from a point of being isolated out here in Alberta. We're talking about it. This is literally a Canadian issue. This is something that's binding us and drawing us together. When I ran my contest out here, first for the nomination, then when I actually ran against the former ag minister in our area, I had a simple message because this is how I felt. Let's take our province back. Well, you know what? We did. My next message was federally, let's take our country back.
Yeah.
So this is us coming together, getting excited, using the emotion for a real reason, putting our minds to it, and showing up and letting folks know that this is not acceptable. You cannot be silent on this. You can't get a pass because they're chipping away at us, and you're not going to have a chance to start turning this boat around unless you actually get off the bench and help us out. I'm supposed to be out there building pipeline projects, not playing politics.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at with this.
No kidding. Well, I think that relentless logic is what we need, because you look at the other side and there's that relentless misinformation and bullshit and pandering to emotion. And they are relentless. So I think we have to take it upon ourselves to be relentless with facts. That's in short supply.
And tact.
Yeah.
And not getting emotion, leave emotion out of it. and just hammer them with facts, common sense, right? And
I just noticed a couple comments earlier, not to change subject. Part of getting people on our side with this too. There's a number of people. I'm sorry, you guys didn't catch your names on it, but they're just pointing out recruitment and making it and I was a broken record on this in the last show, but just making sure we include as many people as you can. And Shane, you mentioned that with the team building thing, and there's just so many opportunities for us to bring people out and show them that this isn't maybe a scary firearm, or that there's a sporting side to it they didn't think of. Maybe they have the same background as you, Shane, was shooting a 22 on the farm. They say, hey, look what we can do,
right?
With put a little bit of paper up and start measuring our performance and that sort of thing. It's just, again, get people involved in it is just sometimes easier than convincing them verbally.
That's right.
Changing their mind.
Yeah, if you can get them there, get them on the trigger and get them on paper, and it makes a difference. We've seen it.
And to put it in context here, fellas, we have the world's second largest mall. It used to be, the biggest one until the guys, same family in Minneapolis built it bigger. Right within that mall, we have Wild West shooting range.
Yep.
We have a gun store right in our mall. So how much more does it take?
What does that say about culture?
Well, and Shane, not only that, you got the Wild West Shooting Center, you got the Red Deer Shooting Center, state-of-the-art facility that does the same thing. You got the Shooting Edge, you got Calgary Shooting Center that both rent out guns for, you just got to buy a box of ammo. You have a lot of opportunities there to take people out or to just go and have fun. Go have a bath, take the girls out and have a great night. Take the boys out and have a great night. Yeah, take the kids out and just go shoot some shit that you've never shot before and just have fun and just it's great. And for pennies on the dollar, you can go out and spend $100 on a plate of steak and lobster, or you can go grab some McDonald's and then run to Red Deer Shooting Centers, buy a box of reloaded 9mm from Wasp Munitions that they have in stock.
Absolutely.
And go blast away. Like
and smell that gunpowder.
Oh. But Kurt, we need proper ventilation. So we don't.
Done.
Anyway.
That's part of it. So, I had the fortune of doing projects down in the States as well and having teams that I managed down there. And when you look at some of the most successful gun ranges, they also are similar to what you would call, the yacht club type idea.
Yeah.
You have that concierge service type idea. You have memberships that go in there. It's no different than going to a golf and country club. You go in there, you've got the range, you've got the high-end stuff that you might not want to buy yourself yet, or you might want to try it, or larger calibers, or all those things.
Everybody
and then
needs
you got your sporting goods front, so you got your pro shop out front, and then you also have the billiards tables, and you have a nice little cafe.
It's exactly like that. Yeah,
there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly's got a great comment here.
Yeah.
Kelly says apathy. Most people are okay with freedoms being eroded based on if it saves one life. They fail to ask questions or research the issue, but instead choose to believe those who govern. Now, God Almighty, isn't that the truth?
Well, we saw that with the COVID measures.
Absolutely.
In Saskatchewan, we did the same amount of lockdowns as they did in New York State.
Right.
And we don't have the population density. I don't believe we necessarily distance better than anyone else, but our numbers didn't go up, but we damaged our economy in the same way. And hey, if it just saved one life, well, there's some people that are still living here that don't have much anymore.
Yeah, but then you got the ag guys who are running, especially some of the large acre growers who have 20, 30, 40, 50 employees. Not one got sick until you saw right now that some of the Hutterite colonies down by Maple Creek got hit with a couple cases down there. But still, that's it. And they ran full bore, and they were loading seed bags, they were loading fertilizer, they were doing all the stuff, passing hands through and through.
They've always done.
Yep. So anyway, cool.
Doug, too. The bottom line is that they have zero evidence to support their assertion that any part of the Firearms Act, aside from basic licensing and safe storage, has any positive impact on public safety. The peer-reviewed study by Kaylin Langman,
Dr. Kaylin Langman,
makes this glaringly clear, he says, and he gives a link there actually too. Great comment.
a few studies that Dr. Langman has done, and he's actually testified in front of committee on a federal level multiple times, providing facts to the Liberal government, and they just go in one ear and out the other. It's anyway.
Well, so one thing that I would agree with you guys on when we tap into the emotion can't be us jumping up and down, but try to elicit the emotion on the other individuals. So again, you have to put it in context of knowing who you're talking to and what matters to them, and then you look at the parallels between it. So if you're a father and you have kids, well, what happened if something happened to your kids? If you're a mother and have the kids, I mean, those are the type of things, right? And again, the narrative that we're bad at presenting, the thing that usually upsets us is, why is this happening to me? I've been a law-abiding citizen my whole life. I served and protected, and I've heard that comment before, and all of a sudden now I'm a criminal. The other one was that this isn't going to save anybody. Why are they not concerned about people's safety? Like true and honest, genuinely about their safety. Right. So the other thing too, I'd propose to folks is don't get too litigious in nature. Leave that for legalese. We're going to cover those. When you're talking to somebody for the first time, it's the elevator pitch. Get your point across in 35 seconds. Why does this bother you, and why should it bother them?
Yeah, the whole read your crowd thing.
And again, we're not as good at that, right? So no, we're not. The other side is fantastic at the 3 sentences that just grips and hearts your mind, pulls on it. So that's where we have to be better. If you want to look for inspiration, look at what they're doing to us. It's no different than any other insurgency. You have to look at what the other side's doing to figure out how you can counter it.
So freaking true. Yep.
Well, right on. Well, thanks, Shane. Thanks, guys, for all the questions. Shane, we're gonna have you back when you make more progress.
Yeah, anytime. And to folks that I'd offer this out there too. There was a gentleman in Regina trying to get something together. I think it was on July 4th, long weekend. So I'd mentioned to him, if you guys need a speaker, if you need someone to talk to your local papers, or if you need to have a quick interview, or if things work out and I can actually get out there and show up, invite me. But as a politician, I can't be the one leading the charge in these demonstrations. I'll be more than happy to support you, give you comments, but I'm not going to organize it for you. This literally is grassroots. If you want me to be effective, and the other politicians that you're on your corner trying to make a change, you guys got to show up, and you got to show it's a team effort here, and you're the bulk of it. Right. We're only the mouthpieces for you. So make sure that we got the right.
You're going to talk off air about who you talk to in Regina about that, because this is news to me.
We may be able to help.
Yeah,
that's right.
That would probably be a good thing. And if you fellas organize something together, I'd be more than happy to speak with you about it.
Don't promise. You know what? We're going to hold you to that, because one day we might have a FFP protest.
Just don't paint me in any corners that'll get me in trouble politically here, guys.
That's right.
We'll try not to, but we're not guaranteeing a thing. Everybody's got to carry his weight. All right.
So where can Shane, if people want to ask you questions or get involved in the committee or that sort of thing, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I guess the first thing, it will have a webpage, and that's the next time you have me on, or I'll send it to you once it's up and running. You can go directly to it, which would be good. But you can share my webpage. So it's lacsannparkland.ca. So that's me there. And then I guess on Facebook is another good way to get a hold of me, and that's Shane Clayton Getson.
Yes. Yep.
And
lacsannparkland.ca.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm comfortable with you guys sharing that. Again, it's for my constituents, but again, on this one, I have some special interest in it. And again, it's right across the country. So I'd be more than happy to help out folks.
Awesome.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And I guess I push this leave button when you tell me to. Is that how this works?
Oh, you can stick around. That's no problem.
Okay.
We'll debrief you.
Yeah.
We'll get you calmed down after this, after we leave here.
Kurt, you added some notes. You modified the show notes, and we haven't been calling out what you've named this stuff. The sections
like that.
Sections is actually pretty cool. So let's get into the ceasefire segment, where we start slowing things down a bit for the main topic. So
ceasefire I renamed from our what was formerly known as naming and shaming. So the human who doesn't suck
Well, I put in Shane and Steve for me in Precision, and Miles, Carrie, Cappy, and Duncan for Bolt Action Coffee and Call Sign 66.
Absolutely.
You know, those guys have helped us out immensely, especially in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking.
And we had a fantastic weekend there. What was it? 3 weekends ago with them?
So fun. 3 weeks ago. It feels like forever ago, but it's only 3 weeks. But you know, we had a great time. We had Cappy, Miles, Duncan, Rob Nibbs, a couple guys, Prairie Long Range Academy. He was out.
Yeah, Curtis Boys.
Stuff. Yeah.
I showed up for it, but there was more than 10 guys on the quarter section of land, so I had to get out of there.
Yeah. Well, we had
to shun them.
Yeah, I had to stand in the other quarter and yell.
Right.
Well, Jay shows up. I'm like, who's this guy showing up in this Dodge? What the hell? What's going on? And then he shows up with his biceps. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Jay. Okay. Anyway, but no, shout out to those guys. You know, thanks guys. We appreciate it. Miles and Cappy especially. I learned so much from my couple hours I was with you guys. Thank you. I cannot thank you guys enough. That was amazing. And also they have kick-ass coffee. That's right. And they started me on my addiction. So thanks, guys. But also check them out, Bolt Action Coffee. Miles, I don't know the website, but if you Google Bolt Action Coffee, they have some stellar coffee. They're out shipping now. They give you 19-ounce bags, I think, like full bags. Oh, it's phenomenal. It's like
a hefty bag.
We tried some at the range there, and I ordered some, and like, mwah, oh, it's so good. It just does the job. So,
okay, so when it comes to bolt action, is that over X number of joules? Is that still going to be allowed, or is it?
Well, we're not going to talk about that. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. We'll keep the energy factor down.
I know Duncan. In all seriousness, I know Duncan there as well, and he's one hell of a guy. But you guys got to lobby for me because I need an Italian dry roast. I've asked him to do that. So if anybody else needs Italian dry roast, get him an order so we can do a batch for all of us.
Let's get a petition started, damn it.
Hey, Miles is watching right now. Miles, get in touch with your roaster. Let's go.
BoltActionCoffee.com.
That's right. Yeah, BoltActionCoffee.com. So check them out. They're great. They're priced great. It's amazing. So check them out. I also said the Dingleberry of the week. I love that term. Our shining pony from the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, lost the seat on the UN Security Council to Norway and Ireland. Sorry, Shane, I'm putting you in a tough spot right now, but how do we lose to an island and Norway? I don't understand. It's
socks.
Let's put it in,
just socks.
Let's put it in context. Why were we chasing after it in the first place?
Exactly. Thank you, Shane.
What do we give? $800 million to Senegal, which stones homosexuals if they find out and that sort of thing. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so good thing that he spent all that money. I'd like to see that money kept in Canada. But anyway, he's our Dingleberry of the week.
Well, listen, Sean, I would see that money spent again to keep him off that damn council.
You're goddamn right.
You're goddamn right, man.
I don't know. Maybe take that $200 million and give it back to Canadian Borders and Customs.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, how many people are freezing and starving in this country?
Well, that's not just starving, but drinking water on First Nations reserves is a shit show.
There's that.
The housing situations, but
we want a vanity project. Yeah, that's what's important. Yeah.
Look at our military spending too. It's unreal. Like we're not keeping up to our UN commitments anyway. Well, that's another thing. I didn't have a dishonorable mention. Did you guys have somebody else you wanted to dishonorably mention? Jay, putting you on the spot.
I don't. No, I'm all about the positivity, man.
That's right. There you go.
Who the fucker invited you?
Yeah, I know.
You're sliding.
You're a different person when the camera's on.
All right, let's move on to our final firing position, which is our shout outs and closing comments here. Shout out today for me is our good friend and podcast listener Francois for coming on to Rooster's Rifle Ranch to give Nancy and myself some shotgunning tips. Also to Nancy my girlfriend, for finally coming out with me and making hits out to 620 meters in 30-mile-an-hour plus gusts. It was
She was making hits at 620?
Absolutely, she was. It was
I got up my game.
Good coach. Good coach.
Well, let's not go too far. Right on.
Sean, you got anything?
Yeah, so I've in our off time, in our break, I've been listening to a lot of Slamfire Radio, and I wanted to give a shout out to Kelly, Adriel, Dave, Trevor. They consistently have been giving us shout outs even when we were gunning around. Yeah. Kelly gave us a shout out on this last Thursday's episode to check us out. So thanks, guys. We've had a lot of live listeners tonight. So
you bet. Awesome.
Probably due to that. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Check them out, Slamfire Radio, anywhere you get your podcasts. I think they go live every Thursday, so you can check them out there too. That's who I had. So also shout out to TNT Gunworks for facilitating my addiction. I found some 130 grain nozzler ballistic tips there, which are awesome, relatively well priced. And then also spear. My dad says this old Parker Hale right here, this girl in 270, she shoots the best 130 grain spear. I can't remember the lead tips, but yeah. So I found Dad's like, I haven't been able to find any for 20 years, and I'm like, walked into TNT and they got a full section. So check them out, TNTgunworks.com, I believe. So anyway,
Shane, any shout outs?
To you guys, actually, and the listeners, for actually caring and paying attention to this. Huge effort out there for folks that have been stirring it and getting out and putting themselves out of their comfort zones to stand up on this. So anybody who's doing that, you definitely deserve hats off to you here.
Listeners were amazing this show.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for chiming in, you guys.
Speaking of chiming in,
questions were fantastic. Like that's being able to read everyone, having the input on it and being engaged with it is really appreciated.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, we are doing a rotating guest host. I've been writing down names for guys who have said they want to come on. So if you want to come on, send us a message. We'll go from there. Anyway,
I have one guy. He's here.
Yeah.
That's my rotation.
We'll have him on again.
Well, I appreciate it. I heard comments that I spoke too much in the last one, so I thought I'd let Shane have a word in edgewise on this one. So I hope that made me a better host.
No, you're good, man. We did great. So. Cool. Jay, who are your shout-outs?
Well, I'm going to give a good luck. I'm walking the walk when I talk about recruitment. I've taken a bunch of guys boar hunting. It's the farmed wild boar adventures. I got a group. There's 3 newbies coming that are avid archers that want to become hunters, and I'm just excited to be able to have the opportunity to give these guys a bit of mentorship and get them in there. The opportunity for them. I was telling you guys before the show, I sat 10 years in a tree stand before I got my first deer with a bow, and these guys, hopefully, it's not a slam dunk, but they'll get an opportunity. I'm really excited to go with these guys, and they're out of their comfort zone a little bit. So I guess a shout out to them.
Yeah. Doug Rodenbush, you are a gem, my friend. Shout out to my dog. Shout out to my dog who caught one of those noisy damn magpies in the backyard last week. I got one question, Doug. What the hell were your lazy cats doing? Oh shit!
Right on.
All right, let's wrap this crap up.
Thanks, guys. Apologies to Wes Stevens. Well, yeah, we still haven't gotten Wes on the show. I know I was drinking with him the other night, and he was really hounding me. He's like, "Guy, I really want to come on. When are you gonna let me on?" Well, sorry, dude. We had Shane Getson for our first one here, and maybe next week. I don't know. Sorry, dude. And for those of you listening on the podcast networks, shout out to John Johnston and his band, the Dirt Road Scholars, for the music. It's just going to be the music this time until he can re-record the voiceovers. So we have to change that up. So thanks, dude. Appreciate it. And see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, fellas.
Rock and roll.
Stay deadly.